Hello, Mr. President. Welcome to the West Richmond interview.
Thank you. It's very nice to finally get a chance to talk to you about my way of thinking about things and how I've looked at these issues that have obviously been taken quite seriously by the 20 people who watch our videos.
And is this a chance for you to explain yourself?
It's a chance for me to explain what I did.
And why you did it.
But I'd like to say a chance for me to explain myself is the language implies I did something wrong, and I don't feel that I have done anything wrong.
Okay, well let's start with perhaps something that is a little less controversial.
Okay, sure, sure.
You went to Easter services. Now, before the interview, you mentioned to me that the church appeared a lot because it's Easter. But one of the interesting things about our friendship, I think, is that you're religious. I'm not, and it was interesting for me to consider. I don't get to see that whole side of your life. I mean, I think one of the things you said in one of the early videos was, "This is my church. I don't think you've ever seen it, Stephen." How big a part of your life do you think that I miss out on, and how does that change the person that I get to see?
Right. Well, what you asked is two very complex questions, obviously. Firstly, as you know, I spend a lot of my time in Birmingham.
My deepest apologies again. I can't imagine the trauma.
You go where the job takes you. You go where the job takes you. So I spend a lot of my time in Birmingham, and I have
in the concrete house or bunker, as it's sometimes known.
Yes, yeah. The exact location of which obviously I can't say, but what I can tell you is that around the concrete house.
Tiverton Road, isn't it?
No. It had to be moved for security reasons.
Oh.
Around the concrete house, there are lots of churches. There are 7 or 8 different Christian congregations that I could be a part of. And I have tried most of them out. And none of them are really for me, because I'm really, despite my policies, quite high church. What's funny?
Your policies. Not that your policies are funny. Just wasn't clear whether you meant your policies or Nixon's policies. Bearing in mind that you don't actually have any policies. Sorry, Mr. President.
So by policies, I mean, thank you for pointing that out. By policies, what I meant was I have quite a liberal mindset, as opposed to Nixon, who maybe might have been seen as not so liberal as myself.
But more liberal than any Republican candidate that is currently, or indeed has at any point, been in the primaries.
Well, yes and no. That's obviously a complex issue.
We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that.
Yeah. So what I was saying is that I don't really go to church in Birmingham because I haven't found a congregation.
In Alabama and you live in the UK.
No, because I've not found a congregation which I can feel suits what I need from my religion. Mm-hmm. As to the other half of you. So just to finish that off, it might not actually be as much of a big part of my life as it was, but it certainly, as you know, I certainly do believe in a higher power, and yes, yeah. But coming on to the second question, really, that you asked, is how much do I change myself in your presence? I would like to think that I don't, really. I don't really approach my religion with anybody openly. I feel it's a private thing. I feel everybody should get the opportunity to approach it their own way privately. So this is why you haven't seen it in my campaigns. because I feel it's too personal a thing for me to trivialize with public outcry. And at the same time, you know, I was raised in England. The etiquette there was such that you don't really, it may be changing a little bit now, but certainly the way I was brought up, the etiquette is you don't really become an evangelist. You, in that sense, you don't talk to people about religion to try and... so whenever you make something that, make a point that I might think might be addressed by religion, or hell might be blasphemous, I don't address it because I don't feel it's my place to try and push that upon you.
Okay, thank you for that. So let's cut to the kind of the burning question at the heart of this interview. When you took the one laptop to the fires of Mount Stretton-on-Dunsmore, firstly, how did you cope without a Sam to help you along? And secondly, why?
Right, sure. Again, double-faceted question there. Firstly, I'll address this one quickly. I don't think that I didn't have a Sam. What I mean is, I think your assumption is incorrect. I feel I did have a Sam. I feel my dog Xena really helped me. You'll see she makes an appearance in the video. And
looking very like Ghost from Game of Thrones. I noticed there.
She'll take that as a compliment. And I feel she was by my side the whole time, and I feel seeing her reactions to me destroying the one laptop really helped cement the ideology of what I was doing.
And what was that ideology? Why was it that not only you, but your father and an independent expert felt that it was necessary to not just recycle the laptop, not just bin it, but to literally smash it apart with the bare tools of basic civilization?
Sure. Well, as you know, in these situations, we've got a lot to consider. We're trying to hold on to what will be best to everyone, which is why we bring in independent experts. And I actually took this to a committee of 2 experts. And the first expert told me that the laptop was useless and that it couldn't be used again and it would be cheaper to buy a new one, which is what I did. My father then, whom I respect and love deeply, took it to a second independent expert, and he suggested that the hard drive needed to be destroyed. Now, I would like to point out that the reason we use independent experts is because we aren't experts in the subject itself. So I feel you asked me why. I feel I won't be able to answer that to the accuracy that perhaps it deserves, and that's maybe a question for the expert himself.
Okay, but Mr. President,
if you let me finish, yes, we did destroy the laptop. I'm not denying that.
Are you saying you took that decision not fully understanding the facts?
Mr. Richmond, please. The advice that came down from the expert was that the hard drive needed to be destroyed, and when the hard drive was destroyed, the laptop is useless. So we might as well destroy the entire laptop, like I said at the time, maybe it was a little wasteful, but I think what you need to remember is that it was fun.
I do take that point, Mr. President, but really, how much is the presidency about having fun? You can leave that one. I think we'll leave that as rhetorical, because there are some bigger issues we need to address here. I mean, straight away, what I want to know is 2 things. I mean, you say you might as well destroy the whole laptop, but to me, unscrewing the thing and just smashing the hard drive would have been just as effective. And you could have recycled, and I think that's a major issue. I mean, you have committed to green policies.
Well, we have.
You want to act against climate change.
If you let me just address that point quickly. We did recycle the laptop after it was destroyed, and if I can use an analogy, it's like shredding one's personal papers that you don't need anymore. You don't shred them and burn them, you shred them and then you recycle the shredded parts.
Okay.
That's sort of like what we did with the laptop.
Okay, and that brings me to my second question, which I think is going to concern many people out there, Mr. President, which is this. You felt that that hard drive contained information so secret that you felt, you know, not only did you need to bin this hard drive, but that you needed to smash it into pieces because the information on it, you so desperately wanted it never to be found. And I think what I and the public want to know, Mr. President, is what is that information and why are you so desperate to keep it out of the public eye?
Okay, well, the information wasn't destroyed. I mean, obviously I can't, for reasons of security, I can't address the first half of that. I can't tell you what the information is. But I can tell you that the information was duplicated and it was put in a more secure location. So what we did was we were upgrading the security. We duplicated what was on the hard drive. We've now put it in a more secure location. And so we destroyed the original. So it's not that we have eradicated, it's not that we're covering up anything. It's that we, obviously if you have two things you need to hide, that's a greater security threat than one thing you need to hide.
Okay, and I think what you've admitted there, Mr. President,
is that we're
you
hiding
do have something to hide. Your definition of not covering something up seems to be, I've taken it from a less secure location and put it in a more secure location. Mr. President, that's not doing a cover-up, that is doing a cover-up.
No. If the state didn't have secrets, then the state would be in peril. We do need to hide this information. I'm not denying that. There are only a few people who have access to this information. In fact, I can count them on one hand. Myself as one of them. And that is for the security of that information. If ever the information needed to be divulged, or if ever the information becomes not as important as it is now, obviously it will become a matter of public record. But I think, Mr. Richmond, you're being unfair in presuming that the state shouldn't have secrets. Okay. Because obviously there are things we need to keep secret.
Okay. And one last question on this issue before we move on, Mr. President.
Sure.
And that's this. I think we can accept that nations need to have secrets. Some information is confidential. Some information is a threat to national security that can never get out. But what I feel you really haven't addressed, Mr. President, is that you're not actually a president, and therefore that's not that's not national security information. And I am going to press you on this, because the truth is that information isn't vital to national security. You're not a government, you're not an elected official, you're some guy doing a vlog in his friend's conservatory. So I ask you again, Mr. President, what is that information, and why do you feel the need to keep it from the public?
I can't tell you that. What do you want me to do? I can't tell you that.
I want you to explain why it is that information is classified to the extent of smashing up electrical goods in your garden.
Okay, well...
with a hammer.
Okay, well... firstly, there's a lot of personal information for me. Secondly, there are videos on there. Not of any compromising nature, don't be ridiculous. There are videos on there that...
But videos you do want to keep private.
Yes.
So you must feel to some extent they're compromising, or else why would you want them to keep them private?
They're not compromising, they're just copyrighted.
Touché.
Thirdly, there's software on there that is copyrighted. Again, it's licensed personally to me. So if that hard drive ever fell into the wrong hands,
they could use Microsoft Word in your name.
With that software, they could, among other things. Microsoft Word is probably...
We're not being sponsored by Microsoft.
Probably the least of the softwares on there. Sorry, Microsoft.
Now you really know that we're not being sponsored by Microsoft.
And I mean, I could go on, but I'm sure if you write to the correct department, they'll give you a detailed list of the things you
We don't have any departments, Mr. President. We've been through this. You're just a guy making a video blog.
Right, yes, but a guy making a video blog can have departments.
But you don't.
Right, yeah. And what you've asked me is a question which I can't fully answer without divulging some of the information that needs to be kept hidden. I'm sure you can appreciate that. So, in the fullness of time, you'll see why the actions that were done needed to be done, and let history be the judge, I suppose. But I feel, at the time, that I did what was asked of me in my position.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to move on now because I feel we've exhausted that issue. Okay, let's. We're just going to take a recess now. Welcome back, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Ready for the second half of the interview.
Is it going to be as long as the first half?
No, second halves are usually shorter.
Okay.
The interval. So, let's cut to a question you raised in your very latest vlog, yet to be aired at the time of this interview, which is you have a boring life and nothing to talk about.
Well, what's your question?
Just wanted to see if you had anything to say. Do you have anything to say?
I'm here to answer questions. So you ask me a question and I'll see if I have an answer to it. Let's do it like that, shall we?
My question was, did you have anything to say?
Not at this stage.
Okay. So you raised this question of in your latest unaired vlog about religion and how someone else's religious views made you look negatively, not just upon them but upon their work, and that made you think about, well, how do people view me and my religious views, and how do I feel about that? And I understand that you had a little bit more you wanted to say on that, so I thought maybe you could just give us that first.
Yeah. At the time, we were short on battery in the camera, so I couldn't finish what I was going to say.
And the napalm was raining down.
I'm not here to discuss Vietnam. So what I wanted to say was, I felt that I was justified in feeling this outrage about Mr. Scottchild's religious views, because they are actively seeking to constrain the free will of another, whereas I actively seek to not do that with my religion. As I stated earlier on in the interview, I wanted to keep it as a personal thing. And that's what I wanted to finish off with.
I see. That's very interesting. Thank you, Mr. President. What I kind of where I wanted to go from there is one of the great questions in philosophy generally, life, religion definitely, and politics is what is good and evil, and what is right and wrong. And so often we find ourselves on us believing that we're on the right side and someone else is on the wrong side, whether it's jihadists looking at America or Americans looking at jihadists. There's kind of that view. And do you feel that what you found there is that fundamental line of the difference between right and wrong is not what views you have, but whether you are actively trying to force that on others? If you actively try and push others, that's wrong. If you decide to do things for yourself and protect others, that's right. Do you feel that's the universal truth?
What I said was not actively trying to persuade others to your point of view. That's allowed. Otherwise, philosophy would be a non-subject.
And politics,
and
for that matter.
And anything, really. What I said, let's be clear, is, I feel, once you start trying to control another person's free will without just reason for it, and the reasoning you give, the backup reasoning that you give for constraining somebody's free will that's my religious belief, then there is something morally wrong with that. Whether that is then universally applicable as a rule of moral law is not my concern, was not my concern at the time, but to answer that now, I feel there is definitely something you can work with there.
Okay, so let's put this in terms of Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
Would you say this was how to define the alignment system in good, neutral, and evil? Good are people who actively try to help others, neutral are people who are either ambivalent or changeable, and evil are people who actively seek to damage or pressure others.
I also think that you can probably fall into the evil category if one is trying to act selfishly, but the outcomes, whether through malice or short-sightedness, end up damaging others as well.
Well, that's interesting, because, I mean, aren't there a lot of characters that you might think are maybe neutral? For instance, the Ents in Lord of the Rings. I don't think anyone would call them evil, but their decision not to enter the war is very much a selfish act, one that they know almost certainly will result in the deaths of millions, and yet they choose not to act. Are you arguing that that act is evil?
Not that particular case in specificity. That particular case, I think there is a certain level of selfishness there that isn't quite evil, but is probably, because it's not malicious, but it's...
Right, so there has to be that actively, I know this is going to hurt others and I don't care.
I think a lot of it is about intention and about, whether you care. That's it, thank you. Whether you care about how much damage you're doing to others.
Could it not be said that the Ents don't care?
But they do care.
But they only entered the war when their own were killed. They explicitly say, if men kill other men, that's not our concern. If spirits kill men, and if elves get killed and dwarves get killed, that's not our concern. It's only our concern when the trees start getting chopped down.
Well, that is them caring about an attack on another person. They see the trees as people.
Okay. It's not themselves personally, but it's their own race.
Yes. I don't think you can hold that against them. Probably on the very basic level. In that, on Earth, let's just bring the analogy into perspective for a second. On Earth, humanity is potentially, and I say this cautiously, the only intelligent species that we can communicate with. Obviously, there are certain exceptions, but by which I mean the only intelligent species one can communicate politics or philosophy with. Or,
can reason with.
Thank you, reason with. Whereas in Middle Earth, there are multiple species who can reason. Now, the reason why I probably think that you can't hold that against the Ents as an evil act is because they are only acting to an evolutionary primitive that they want to keep their species alive. So as long as they're not being attacked, they risk more by entering the war, and say they probably can see that they could do a lot of good, but they risk more than entering a war than they can be willing to risk.
Okay, so would you argue that that evolutionary argument also kind of applies to tribes? We protect our own kin, our own tribes, because that's an advantage to us.
Certainly.
So what you're saying is that the fact Western nations have decided not to intervene in Syria is not an evil act, even though it has resulted in the latest figures put the deaths at least 9,000, if not over 10,000, probably more.
Well, you see, this may be different again. In recent years, there has been a lot of Western intervention in Eastern affairs that has resulted in political fallout, but more importantly, collateral damage. So you can look at that situation and say 10,000 people have died. But what you cannot do is say, if we had gone in, 10,000 people would not have died, or 10,000 civilians would not have died. You have to take into account that in every war there is collateral damage. And if you're going to go in, not only are you killing enemy soldiers, not only are you putting at risk all of the political tension around that area, which I think it's fair to say there is some, you also have to take into account, if we're just playing a numbers game, it's not a certain numbers game.
Thank you. That's a very good answer, Mr. President. Thank you for that. So, how do you feel then about the Libyan intervention? Because I mean, on that argument again, that's not a certain numbers game. We didn't know. Why do you, or how do you feel the situations are similar or different in Libya and Syria? Do you feel that it was wrong to interfere in Libya, or do you feel that they're different cases and one was right and one was wrong?
I feel this is strayed a little bit from my vlog every day in April.
You asked for the interview, Mr. President. And you brought up the morality of whether, you know, of what's okay and what's not. No, I brought that up, but that's not the point.
Syria and Libya are different, firstly, because how are they different? I know nothing. I know nothing about this.
Oh, this is like interviewing Sarah Palin. This is amazing. Can you see Russia from your house?
No. When you look at Syria, intervening in Syria because of the political tension in the region, as I stated before, would mean probably a bigger fallout than intervening where it was asked for in Libya.
Oh right, but I mean, my question to you immediately is that in Libya, both Russia and China, two of the world's biggest nations, were very much against it. The Arab Spring, I don't think you can argue there is a bigger political fallout than a complete change in the entire Arab world. And also Egypt shares a border with Israel. We didn't stop that.
Let me tell you what I think has happened here. This started out as a parody joke where you would be David Frost and I would be Richard Nixon, but we would talk as if we were Stephen and Leo. What has happened is that we have shifted into the characters, and you're talking to me as if I'm actually President of the United States. I have no control over these, and principally I agree with you. Like I said, what is the difference between Libya and Syria? There is no difference. What has happened is you've taken this role-playing to a level I wasn't prepared for, because I'm not actually a Republican president.
Well, that's fair enough.
Or even an ex-Republican president.
That's fair enough, Mr. President. But that's fair enough, Mr. President, but I put this to you. You brought up philosophy and the man's book that you were reading and why you felt you were against him, and that philosophical discussion is what we are continuing to have.
Okay, well in that case, I backtrack openly and say there is no difference between Libya and Syria. We should intervene in Syria, or we shouldn't have intervened in Libya. Pick one.
Thank you, Mr. President.